Hello, everyone. My name is Holly Genvy, and I'm a member of DePaul PRAD. Recently, I had the pleasure of speaking with two DePaul PRAD professors, Ron Culp and Matt Ragas, whose work goes beyond the classroom setting. Culp and Ragas recently published their new book, Business Acumen for Strategic Communicators, in March after 3 years of work. It highlights the business essentials a communicator must have in order to be successful. Without further ado, let's proceed to the interview. Can you both give, for our viewers and listeners, a brief introduction of yourself?
Matt, do you want to start?
Sure. Professor Matt Ragas. Some of you watching this are probably like, I always joke, Ragas rhymes with Vegas. This is year 11 for me at DePaul. I'm a tenured associate professor here in the college. Used to be co-director of the graduate program with Ron in public relations and advertising. Really excited to share that we're about to launch a new graduate program, a master's in professional communication, ProCom, which is an accelerated, fully online 1-year degree. And I guess the other thing I would share is this is book number 3 that Ron and I have now collaborated on over, I guess over 8 years or so. It's really amazing, this partnership, this friendship, this mentorship that in many ways is really grounded in the success of our students, Holly, of you and DePaul PRSSA and our students and now hundreds of alumni.
That's amazing to hear.
Well, Holly, much like you, I started my career as an intern for a newspaper, small newspaper near my hometown, and then went on to working for a bigger paper, and that led to working in politics. Then I had several corporate jobs as a result of that. And then I changed to the agency world. And during that time, working for Ketchum in Chicago is when I met folks from DePaul who talked me into coming over and joining the faculty there. And it's been a phenomenal experience. I came about a year after Matt did, and we immediately bonded. And one of the first questions he asked me was, have you ever thought of writing a book? I thought it was a joke, but when he told me the subject matter, I bought in immediately. And we've had an amazing time with writing 3 books, as he mentioned, that we hope are helping the profession.
Culp and Ragas explained why last month was the perfect time to publish their book, even amid a pandemic.
Our first book came out in, which sounds funny to say now, 2014. And so that book has been, I think, well used in about 25 different colleges and university programs and agency and in-house training development programs. But it was time for an update. And Ron and I have known it's been time for an update for some while. Writing a book's a significant undertaking. And so we started on this voyage really sketching it out 3 years ago. And then we had COVID thrown into the mix, as you might imagine, and kind of work in life. But it was time for an update in terms of what's going on in our field, the examples, the cases that are in it, the quotes, really the content was time for not just a refresh, but really a shift of where this field has gone. Writing this book really had Ron and I reflect on how much has changed just within the past 5 or 6 years since that last book.
And we also had the benefit then of what all was happening while we wrote this book, or writing this book, that COVID caused. And so we're able to incorporate that thinking and how that's going to fundamentally change communications, especially business communications going forward.
Definitely. And you've, as Professor Ragas mentioned, this is the 3rd book you wrote together. What drove you to write this book specifically?
Well, we were really pleased with how relevant Business Essentials, our first book, still was. and it's being used in some 40 universities, and a lot of universities continue using it, they've indicated. But we felt that this book will update and be more current for students really wanting to know what's happening here and now in financial communications and in business communications.
And can you go through the process? You were drawing on this before, but I find it interesting because I've always wanted to be an author and still want to. Can you go about the process of collaborating on a book together?
Oh, I'm going to give full credit
Yeah,
to
well,
Matt. This book would have
you know,
never been written without him.
you know what I was going to
He,
say, which is really interesting, is no book is exactly the same, and so Ron and I have had the benefits now of doing 3 books together, different publishers, different editorial teams, different processes, and then this one's been totally different in the sense that it happened during a global pandemic. And so it's really interesting in terms of what Ron alluded to, shifts kind of in business and society. We've probably at this point, as of this recording, maybe have seen ourselves together 3 times in a year and a half. Do you know what I mean? But when you think about the amount of Zooms we've been on, or Teams meetings, or emails, or phone calls, we've been connected, throughout, and the tools that we have to collaborate, to work on a book project, Holly, have just gotten better. You know what I mean? It's even compared to 5 years ago, 6, 7, 8 years ago, it would have been much more difficult. I don't know if this book would be coming out right now, quite honestly, if not for the collaborative tools and technology. And I think the relationship and trust that we already had, where we kind of take turns finishing each other's sentences. So that helped as well. But it is interesting to think about what's been possible because of, in part, kind of technology and relationships.
Very good point, Matt. One of the things that struck me is that we probably had our best communications ever in a book with this one, because we had to. We had to stay in touch. We communicated more effectively, far more organized, and we knew what deadlines were coming and other demands that we were facing. So the pandemic really, I think, has totally fundamentally changed how people work together and work together effectively. The other thing I think, if encourage anyone to write a book, just don't expect you're going to get rich from it. Even though we sell quite a few copies of this book, it's not something that you're going to do unless you have real passion for the subject.
Definitely. So in your book, you also include case studies from many organizations, including CVS Health, Costco, Southwest Airlines, and more. Can you explain why these studies stood out to you and how they would impact your readers?
I would say one thing we think about, and you learn from just writing books and being a teacher, is you want to use examples of brands that are well respected and well regarded, but also relatable to your readers, and that are very much known brands. And so that kind of drives that decision making, right? Of familiarity, Holly, with who are these brands that you talked about. And then the second part of it is examples that we really believe are best in class, that are handling things that in many cases we're friends then and friendly with, their comms department, their comms team, and their CCO. And we think that they have a really valuable lesson to share. And Ron and I are big fans of using case studies to bring concepts and ideas really to life. And it's one way you learn is by looking at how people have done something the wrong way, or maybe might adjust or change something a little bit in the future. It really puts you kind of in the driver's, in that CCO driver's seat.
Culp and Ragas' book covers the anecdotes of a variety of influential figures, including Shelley Lazarus, the chairman emeritus at Ogilvy and Mather, as well as Joe Cohen, the chief marketing and communications officer at Axis. Culp explains how these stories came to life.
We have the good fortune that Matt and I are both members of the Arthur Page Society, so we meet a lot of senior people. It consists of the top executives in communications functions, both in agencies and corporations. So that network is very valuable. And then my having worked in 4 Fortune 500 companies, Shelley Lazarus became a friend over the years because she was the advertising agency that we used at 2 of those companies. And as a result, with knowing the Ogilvy people, it was easy to reach out to her. As everyone else, we have some form of friendship that most of it came through the networking that we've done over the years. So another important point for students and PRSSA members is build that network, build your LinkedIn connections, because that's how I ended up finding and getting the email addresses for most of the people who are in the book, is either through that network or through being able to stay connected through LinkedIn.
Your book is also very interactive because of your discussion questions after each chapter. How did you come up with the questions?
You know what I would credit, Holly, again, is we've been at DePaul so long now that, you know, the way that we teach and approach things is very interactive, right? Like, you don't run DePaul classes where you stand in front of a room and just lecture, right? Students want to be engaged and involved in the process. And so a lot of this book and the design of it and the content of it is really wrapped up, honestly, in the DePaul student experience, right? And so when you think about, you know, what's cool when you're an author and co-authors or co-editors, you can think about what's this product that you want to create that you then think will work the best, right, in training and development or in classrooms. And so for us, it's discussions, and I think we've kind of learned from the prior books what are some of the more provocative questions that can be asked that will lead to, as we know with DePaul students, one thing we really love is y'all don't lack for having a point of view. And so a big thing with us, though, is making sure that point of view is actually grounded in factual and accurate information, right? So then you can kind of argue an evidence-based perspective.
Lastly, Culp and Ragas' book gives students the tools they need to be successful in the working world.
The key thing is we want to give you the confidence that when you're called in to a meeting and all of a sudden they tell you they need help solving a business problem and they mention what it is and that they're worried about the ROI of the company. We want students and everyone who's in that situation not to do as happened to me when I joined corporate America and they asked me to write an earnings report and I had to ask somebody what earnings were. We want you to be prepared to go into those meetings with the kind of confidence that, oh yeah, I can do that. That is where the superstars are made in this profession. Being able to say, oh, I can do that.
I think as Ron said, I think we are helping students to build confidence and build that business case, because you're going to work with MBAs as clients and colleagues for a chunk of your career to come ahead.
Well, that's all I have for the both of you today. I really appreciate the time speaking with you both today. And yes, everyone, be sure to purchase their new book. As I said before, I'm loving it. It's really essential knowledge to have going forward into your careers, and you get to learn really interesting terms and stories. So Professor Culp and Professor Ragas, thank you so much for your time today.
Great talking with you today,
Thanks so
Holly. I
much
hope
for
to see you
having
all
us.
on campus soon.
We love the Paul PRSSA.
See you all soon. Bye.